Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to yet another Sketchbook session. This is a series where I go about just kind of treating a document as though it's my sketchbook, and doing the same sorts of things that I would normally do inside of a sketchbook. And normally, most of the time when I'm working with the sketchbook, I'm just trying to figure things out. And in this particular video, I've been working with my mascot for quite a long time, but I haven't actually done a character expression chart with my mascot yet. And what better time than the present? And why not cue you guys in on the process? I mean, heck, you guys were involved with the entire step-by-step process in creating this mascot, so why the heck not include you guys in on this? Now, by the time that you guys watch this video, a lot of these images will have already been shared on social media, and that's some of the appeal of this series. All of the pictures that I go about drawing inside of the Sketchbook Session series winds up being shared for you guys for free. Free images. So, cool beans. Yeah, so this is more of the aggression. It's an expression that I've never done for my mascot before. It's got a lot of intensity to it. And this one made me feel pretty confident. Probably a little bit more confident than I should have been, because immediately afterwards I did anger, which is the direct opposite of what I normally do for my mascot. Most of the time, since I haven't done an expression, an emotional chart for my mascot, I've just made him happy all the time. Just simply because, how can you go wrong always having your mascot being happy? It makes people feel nice, warm, and fuzzy. And so, as a little bit of an advertisement sort of gizmo, that like what my mascot is, I mean, seems like exactly what I might want. Now, this one was interesting because I actually have two different versions of the anger pose, or the anger expression. And that's basically because, the first attempt, I tried to see just how much anime I could introduce into the design of the character, because that's some of what the expression, the emotional chart is all about. It's where you get a design for a character and then you stretch all of his features all the way to the maximum, and you see if you can still keep the essence of who that character is.
We interrupt this regular scheduled programming in order to ask that if you enjoy this content and would like to support it, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Or feel free to purchase one of our t-shirts. A link is down in the video description below. Just go ahead and click away and it'll take you to the Teespring store.
Now, maybe I might be able to get this particular pose to work correctly, where, the specific anime thing that I introduced was sometimes inside of anime, or just generally in cartoons, a character's mouth opens up so expressively that their mouth exceeds outside of their skeletal structure, and it's obnoxious and awesome. And I wanted to see if I could do that with my mascot. I don't know if I can. I kind of think I can, but maybe it's just that I drew the character too small. The pixels per inch wasn't really all that refined, and maybe my line work was a little bit too thick, but it is a sketchbook session, so I'm allowed to, just exercise, practice, and I'm also allowed to fail. So I will show the final version of the anger pose, but since I have another version of it that I draw out later on down the road, I'm going to cue you in on both of those two versions when I draw out the second version. Now, this is anxiety. I think I captured anxiety correct, but I think that somewhere along the lines, like when I first started it out, the essence of the Orphan Last mascot was still there, but somewhere in the middle of it all, it just kind of disappeared. And so I don't feel as though it quite looks like my mascot, and so this is one of the main ones that I want to go back and revisit, just simply because it's still one of those lingering expressions that I feel like I haven't quite yet nailed down. And I think that if there's a way that I could simplify it a little bit more, there's a lot of wrinkles on his forehead, and maybe that's just something that might be kind of distracting from his design. He's typically had a much cleaner design to his look, and so I want to see if I can get rid of some of the over complexity of that particular emotion. So yeah, this one is ashamed, and I think I nailed it down pretty well, where it's just kind of like, the weird thing about emotions is it's like, okay, you hear the word ashamed, and it's like, okay, well, what type of story is playing out in your head where your mascot, where your character is ashamed? Because he might be ashamed of somebody else, he might personally be feeling ashamed, and what I was ultimately kind of feeling is like, I don't know, at least when I feel ashamed, I tend to just withdraw inwardly and just kind of start living in my own world a little bit in my own head. So I kind of wanted to see if I could capture that particular concept of the mascot just kind of going into his own little world. Now this one is being bashful, and I actually eventually wound up actually just looking up, the Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, and looked up bashful, and some of his weird, funny poses. He's a cute character, and that's some of the reason why people like that specific character. And so I kind of did this, and then after having drawn it, I can't help but think that I've seen a fairly famous actor have a similar sort of pose, kind of becoming a little bit iconic towards it. Now, I can't recall whether it's Marlon Brando, James Dean, or maybe even Benicio del Toro. I can't really recall, but the thing is since I can't recall which actor is kind of famous for having this specific look, I can't really say that I used them as a reference or as inspiration either, because it only occurred to me after the fact, and I don't really know which actor it was that's famous for it. If you guys happen to know, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. And it works. As being bashful, I think this works. I think that I need to get more of the actual structure of the mascot in the pose a little bit better. I mean, he still looks like my mascot, but things are just a little bit slightly disjointed with that bashful pose. And this is another one where I capture the essence of boredom, but the weird thing is again, I wound up kind of losing the essence of my mascot. When looking at the image, you still see the mascot, but just simply because, he has all the attributes of what my mascot has. But I think I want to revisit this particular image again, this particular emotion. I had a lot of difficulty with this particular emotion, boredom, and I actually eventually just took a photograph of myself, just kind of squishing the side of my face out of the look of boredom and kind of over-exaggerated it, and I like it. I think it really works. It's just kind of like one eye's open like, oh my gosh, you're still talking, and then the other one is just completely deformed and from his hand pressing against the cheek. I've been there, and so I think it works, at least partially, and so yet again, I want to revisit the boredom pose. This one came out looking really good, but his features, even though my mascot does have some elements of a sharp shape language, this is just a little bit too sharp, and I gave his chin just a little bit too much length. And even still, you can see parts of this video footage where I did try to adjust the length of his chin, but still it just kind of feels like maybe, I don't know, maybe his cheekbones need to be a little less narrow or something like that. I don't know. I'll wind up using this as a reference to tackle this particular emotion again later on down the road, but it was worth the practice. And so now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one, which is confidence. Now, the funny thing is that I wasn't feeling all too confident initially when I drew this particular image, but then it dawned on me. I'm like, no, actually, that's all I ever do with my mascot. I always draw him happy and confident. And so once I realized that, I kind of had the Dumbo's feather, and it's just like, it just came out real quick and easy and really expressive as well. This one came out with the least amount of effort, just simply because I always draw him like this. I was so confident in my ability to make it that I wound up just with a few gestural drawings, I wound up actually drawing out most of his torso. No, actually, all of his torso and some of his pants as well. So yeah, I like it. It's not the typical sort of confident pose that I would normally give him. I kind of feel as though the other eye should be open and the other eye should be closed. But then again, you do sometimes see people, when they're confident, do something that's a little bit awkward, and yet they just roll with it because they're confident. And so this works, even though the pose seems a little awkward in terms of which eye is open and which eye eye is closed, he's still pulling it off and with confidence, and so that seems to work with me. All right, so this next one is confusion. And initially I kind of drew him out with, like his features were just a little bit too wide, but eventually, just a simple transformation sometimes fixes all of those issues. His eye is just a little bit too big. I really feel as though his eye is just a little bit too big, but other than that, I really think I nailed it down. And if the sound, winds up coming into your head when you see this particular image of my mascot in a state of confusion, then I think I've done my job, really, because I was just kind of picturing him listening to just an idiot go on and talking about stupid stuff, and he's just like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different types of confusion, like maybe he bonked his head and now he's completely disoriented. That's more of like a physical ailment sort of confusion. But like, there's not any one particular form of confusion out there, or any one particular singular expression that captures a particular emotion. There's tons of different expressions. For example, this one is curiosity. Being curious. And so this one, initially I was just kind of thinking, yeah, okay, someone's got something. It's like, hey, you want to take a look at this? And it's like, oh yeah, what is it? So that's curiosity right there. But it seemed like it was just a little bit too run-of-the-mill. You see people with this sort of expression all the time. And so it didn't quite feel unique enough. It didn't really feel like an exercise enough. And it moderately looks like my mascot. I feel like I kind of screwed up some of the essence of what makes him who he is, but it's still convincing enough as being him. Basically, I actually take another stab at this, and so the second stab is a heck of a lot better. Basically, this second approach towards working on the curiosity was more like, okay, so there's a conversation that's really interesting happening inside of the same room. Maybe these people don't realize that my mascot, maybe they don't even realize that he's in the room with them. And so he's just kind of overhearing the conversation. He's like, just kind of like his curiosity is piqued, and so he's kind of eavesdropping on the conversation. And so that works as curiosity to me, at least. And I decided to kind of experiment with these, especially with, just what can I do with the shading and the lighting and the shadows and such on him, in order to help convey each emotion. So you can see both versions of curiosity. One is more run-of-the-mill, one is more like kind of eavesdropping. I like it. I think it turned out pretty good. You can see that there's differences in the line thicknesses, and I think that when I get a little bit heavy-handed with line thickness, that's usually when things don't really work out very well. So this is the moment in time when I decided to revisit the anger expression. And I still wanted to experiment with the concept of such an overly exaggerated sort of facial expression where the mouth winds up exceeding past the skeletal structure of the character's face. And to some extent it kind of worked, but to another degree it never did. And so eventually I just kind of abandoned that. I still want to play around with that sort of concept, but once I wound up getting rid of that super cartoony over exaggeration, all of a sudden the whole image started to kind of come together a lot better. But his face just lost all of its structure at this point. And so even though I was happy with it to at least some degree, I wound up, using it as a sketch once again, and you can kind of see me shifting over on the sketch every once in a while in order to kind of rework the proportions of the face and recapture the likeness of my mascot. Now, if there's only one thing, if there's one thing that I can really say that I'm just a little bit disappointed with this final version of anger, it's this. When you're angry, there's usually a crease in the middle of your eyebrows and maybe creases on the top of your nose and such. It still looks like anger to me. and it definitely looks like my mascot, but you know, I still feel as though I need at least a few creases going on or along the brow line, basically the eyebrow areas. And but you look at them side by side, and you can tell that the second version is much better, at least in my opinion. It has a lot more activity going on with it, and of course, you know, it's a little bit, it's kind of a 3/4 view of the character's face, and it just came out looking really well. Yes, this one is depressed, okay? You know, it's weird because, you know, there's a number of different expressions inside of this exercise that I've done here. You know, ashamed, and you know, there's of course depressed, and then later on in the video I do disappointed. And you know, there's subtleties in the differences of these emotions, and it's really hard to capture the difference from depression to disappointed to all of these sorts of things, and being ashamed. But I think this really does look like a form of depression, where it's just like where he's all alone and he's just kind of thinking to himself, man, what's going on? What am I going to do next? That sort of thing. And so now I move on to the next one. I forgot which one this is. Oh, this one's determination. And this one came pretty easy to me as well, just simply because, you know, if you've seen any kind of anime, you've seen a million different types of determination. But not only that, in a way, this is just like the confidence illustration that I did. You know, this is something that I've done 1,000 times with my mascot already. And so, of course, I'm going to excel in making determination, because you know, confidence, determination, just generally, there's not too much difference from being determined to being confident. I think it came out looking pretty good. I think I needed to get the structure of the page right eye a little bit better. But other than that, I think I got it pretty spot on. Yeah, this one is the disappointment image, and you know, it works, I guess, to some extent. I feel like it kind of slightly hit the mark of disappointment, and yet I don't know, it never really quite captured the essence of my mascot. I think his forehead is just a little bit too bulbous, and yeah, I don't know. This is an expression I want to completely redo and retry, and you know, it's a sketchbook session. You're allowed to fail. You're allowed to just experiment. Not everything inside of a sketchbook or even a sketchbook session needs to be a masterpiece. It's just you figuring things out. So you can see that I kind of reworked a few things to try to get him to look more like my mascot, but even still, this is the one image inside of this entire video that I feel like I did the least satisfactory, I suppose. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to join my Discord server. A link to my Discord server is in the video description below. If you'd like to support this channel, you could purchase one of my t-shirts on my Teespring. A link to my Teespring is in the video description below. And if you've enjoyed this content and would like to see more, feel free to click on anything else that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.